Well, hello and welcome to the incredible Cotswold Water Park. And just through this tree line here is somewhere truly special, and for me somewhere where literally I still have not properly set eyes on. Behind me is my new syndicate for the 2024-2025 season, and the whole purpose of this video is going to be talking about how I approach a new venue. Now, with my work and what I do, I said a lot of the times I'm fishing new venues, but this is a venue that I'm going to be spending a bit of time on, both for work and personal fishing, in the fact that it is my new syndicate. Now, as I say, when I'm saying new, I mean deadly new. This is the first time I have ever set eyes on it. And literally, I've jumped out the van, come straight here, set the camera up, because the whole point of this video, however long it is to take you on the journey of how I approach fishing a new venue. So, to be honest, I am buzzing. I didn't sleep very well last night because I knew where I was coming to. And behind me is a load of mega Cotswold carp. Scalies, commons, all of them are in this lake behind me. So without further ado, what I'm going to do, grab the camera, grab a bucket, go for a little lap and sort of try and find out where I think those fish are, where I'm going to set up and what I'm going to be up to over the next few days. So as I say, without further ado, I'm going to go back to the van, grab a bucket and get on my toes and take you guys with me. Right, so I'm about half of the way around now. And so the thing with carrying this big old camera on a tripod is obviously I'm not going to be able to stop in every swim and show you. But essentially the reason I've stopped here is because this is the wind's sided bank, if you like. At the moment, the prevailing wind is hacking into these swims. Now, I have seen one very short, sort of 20 yards out in front of me here. And that is a great sign. If you can see fish on a new venue, that's going to give you an eyes open. Walking around, I have seen a few more fish, and they have predominantly been this side of the lake. If you like, it's quite a round lake, and I'm trying to divide it into quarters. So they've all been in this bottom half, top right quarter. Hopefully I'll overlay a nice picture so you can understand exactly what I mean. Now, I am obviously going to complete a full lap, but the beautiful thing with this lake is, for me especially, and on the first time, is I can see 100% of the water from nearly 100% of the swims. Because of the shape, it is just a big sort of rounded square, if you like. So when it comes to approaching a new venue for anywhere, and going to any venue at all, find the fish. And for me, the ability to see fish showing already is a massive edge. So I'm going to spend another sort of 10-15 minutes here and then complete the rest of the lap. But for me already, a box has been ticked. I've seen some fish in an area that I can be in fishing. So as I say, I'm looking over my shoulder because I can hear fish showing and they're just out here somewhere. So I'm going to spend another little bit of time here, but when approaching a new venue, if you can see fish, keep an eye on those fish, see what they're up to. That's my first big tip. As with anywhere, you got to find them first. Right, very long story short, completed a lap and then another lap. And I've ended up, believe it or not, about 3 or 4 swims up for where I initially spoke to you about that wind hacking in. The fish haven't been as showy. So I spoke to one, there's only one person on the entire lake. I had a quick chat with him and he said a lot of the fish had been this side of the lake. So yet again, already bit of sort of on lake knowledge, if you like, someone on the lake. So I have had friends who've fished here before. I've listened to a little bit of what they said. Obviously I've watched some of the videos on YouTube, but there's not an awful lot written about it, certainly not. It's a reasonably new venue, but the fact that I've seen fish show, the fact that this wind is pushing in, the fact that I can see everywhere else from what I think is a good area, this is the reason why I've dropped my bucket here. I think it's called the doubles, because there's a double swim. And behind me I've got a lovely little sort of stock, I don't know whether it's a stock pond or what's in there, but it's a beautiful little reed line pond, so I'm really, really excited. But already, from approaching a new venue aspect, because that's the whole point of this video, do the foot miles, have a look for them until you find them. I, in my own fishing, have failed to do that in many, many occasions, and on that drive home, it's when you kick yourself. You've got to find the fish, you've got to be aware of those fish. But the beautiful thing with this lake is, as I said numerous times already, I can see everywhere. So if I can get into a spot that I'm happy with straight away and see the fish and keep my eyes on the pond, I've got a good chance of, if they do move, I can move indeed with them. So the bucket's in, I'm going to quickly run around to the van, grab the kit and bow around here. My heart is going 10 to a dozen, not from the fact that I just ran around here, but just from the fact of how exciting it is to be at this new venue. So without further ado, to grab the kit. Right, so finally hit the swim, and as I say, I do know something about this lake in the fact that it's weedy, but there are features in here. So what I'm going to do, without further ado, what I do whenever I get to any venue, as long as it's within my water, and I don't know why I do this, I wrap up at 25 wraps, 100 yards, and then work backwards. Now, from what I can see here in front of me, and being unbelievably the only person on the entire lake, I've got the whole lot of water. But I will still try and find anything between 100 yards back to me. If indeed there is nothing there, then I will, of course, go further. But for me, I don't know why, I always start at 25 wraps and work backwards. Because for me, 100, as the fish just rolls at the back of the spot. For me, 100 yards in 99% of conditions is very, very attainable. Because I know that they like bait in here, I'm going to give them a lot of bait. So I don't want to pick a spot at 30 wraps if it was in my water and then not be able to achieve it if it was crosswinds, etc, etc. So I'm going to quickly wrap up at 25 wraps, put the marker out and then dance it all the way back and see if I can find anything in my square of water that I found. Right, well, I've not wanted to bother you with loads of clips of me casting out the rods, but spot wise, what have I found? As I said to you earlier, I started at 25 wraps. Now I have found spots between 25 and me, but they are quite deep. Whilst I was marking, I have seen quite a lot of fish show out in the central area of the lake. Now out there's some poles with crayfish pots attached and a big buoy and a lot of sort of features, if you like, for those fish to mooch in and around, and they have predominantly been out long. So I skipped the rod in, took out the 22 wrap clip, skipped the rod in, whacked it out, and I found a lovely drop, clipped it up, it's 28 wraps. Now for me that is a long way, but it is achievable. The spawn's flying out, the spod rod's flying out there, so we should be fine with casting out the baits as well. But yeah, my heart is pounding, it's ridiculous. These fish seem to be quite active and showy. Now, the gentleman I spoke to earlier when I did a lap round said he hadn't seen an awful lot, which was uncommon for here. So to see a few more is buoying me up. I have seen them really, really short, but as I said, that's a bit of no man's land really regards the depth of water. So I've gone long into that shallower platformy area. It was probably about 8, maybe 9 foot as opposed to 12, 13s that I found shorter. I'm going to give them a big whack of bait in a minute and fingers crossed, get the rods out hopefully before it gets too dark because time is ticking really quickly and we will see what the evening and into tomorrow brings. I will catch up with you later. I am going to get the bait out now. I'm going to make a load of kerfuffle. We'll talk about all those bits and pieces hopefully later on in the session. But for now, time is whipping away. I want to get these rods out. So now, catch you in a bit. Right then, that is the rods finally out and fishing. I sound out of breath because it has been a gargantuan effort. As I say, from my little knowledge of the place, as I said, it's completely unavoidable to hear nothing about venues like this. I am fully aware there is a lot of craze in here and that they love bait. Not just the craze, the actual carp, obviously. So, yeah, I was advised, get it in, essentially. So as I've walked around, I have bumped into Rich, the owner, and his dad, and had a great little chat, but I was quite clear I don't want to know loads of bits and pieces. So they kept quite quiet, but yet again, another point was the bait. So I put 3/4 of a 17-litre bucket straight out before even getting the rods out of the bag. Found the spot like we spoke about earlier, really happy with it. Slightly shallower ground, in and around where those fish have been showing, and then I've given them a mix of 8, 12 and 50mm boilie and a load of that Calamino pellet. And hopefully that's going to be the sort of spark. Now, I'm not expecting anything very quickly. It's a tough little water. It can be very rewarding, but it can also kick your bum. So the initial bolt of bait, it's a lot of noise, a lot of disturbance, 28 wraps, it's a lot of reeling back in. The rods then went out 3 casts, bang, 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 absolutely beautifully. Now, because of the craze, we'll talk about rigs, but I am using rubber baits. I've used rubber corn for years, but yeah, the whole rubber boilie thing is very new to me. But yes, those gasps I'm giving are not just from being tired, being overweight and being old. It's from anticipation. My heart is genuinely racing. This is really exciting. But from a sort of how to approach a new venue, I've gone in with rigs I trust, baits that I'm fully trusting in, and essentially it's exactly doing the same. That's the biggest thing when you come to somewhere new, is do not try and rewrite the rule book. If there is a bait that they not like, if it's a fish meal or a nut bait water, yes, certainly use those baits that you have used that you have confidence in, but do not try to change the world. But for now, as the Chinook goes overhead, I'm going to sit back, have something to drink, and take in this awesome new venue. Yeah, it's out there somewhere are a good handful of PBs for me, so the anticipation levels are high, and the fact that they are showers, they are jumping out, is filling my heart with sort of anticipation. So yeah, if I ever lose that buzz, I will quit carp fishing. But for now, that's me, bait out, rods out, and fingers crossed. Well, as the sun begins to set, not a lot's happened, not even a liner. But it's to be expected. I've put out a 17-litre bucket all at once. Caused quite a lot of chaos. Marking up, obviously finding a spot, 17 litres of bait, then a couple of rods. It was always going to happen really. But the beautiful thing about it is I've got plenty of time. The fish are insanely active. It's crazy just how active the fish are. And as far as I'm concerned, they're burning energy. They will require food. So there is a big table laid for them out there. The one thing to note is there is only 2 of us on 22 acres of water that contains at least one, if not potentially 2 50s, a good head of 40s and loads of 30s. Places like this don't often exist, and this is why I've waited so long for this ticket. So to bring you on this very first trip, journey if you like, yeah, it's really exciting. As I say, I was meant to have one of the other camera guys with me, but I don't know, this intimacy of just me and this camera is, yeah, it's exciting. But don't want to waffle on for too much longer. Just had some burgers. Unfortunately, I forgot the buns, the cheese, the sauce. So it was burgers and a bit of salad leaves, but no carbs before marbs. But yes, as we go into night number 1 of the new syndicate, as I say, I've said it nearly every time I've spoken to, my heart is pounding. I've seen 2 fish today that were giants jumping, like giants. Seen a lot of smaller fish, but probably, upper 20-pound carp. But 2 fish that jumped out earlier were megalodons. So I'm going to have a sit and a chill watch the evening roll in and see if one of these Carpathia carp greet me on my very first trip. For now, let's have a chill out. Well, good afternoon really. Nothing happened overnight. Lake went absolutely flat calm for about 2 hours. Fish, you can see them jumping everywhere. And I mean everywhere, literally. You'd see one near you, then one as far away as it could be from you. Now, part of learning a new venue is learning the fish behaviours. And I've already learned these fish do love a show. So what I'm looking for more than anything there is fish, multiple fish showing in the same area, because what that means is I can potentially home in on another area. But there was enough in front of me compared to nearly everywhere else that it means to stick it out. Rode it through the night, nothing, not even a liner. But you've got to remember not to beat yourselves up. You know, I'm less than 24 hours in on a session on a new venue that I've never seen before. So that is part of learning a new venue, is not to beat yourself up. Don't get beaten by it either. So I'm going to skip these rods in. I did put a little bit of bait in the swim, a few swims down yesterday. And I'm going to have a quick look in there, see if anything's happening. If there is, I'll take you down there to have a look at potentially a small stalking opportunity in the shallower water. But the weather is unseasonably July. It's windy. We've had drizzle all through the night. It's not what I'd expect, but that's not excuses. So if anything, nothing happens, what I'll do is later on, you'll cut back to me, probably in pretty much the same position, putting these rods back out for the evening. I'm not going to put any more bait out because I put a lot out, which is what the lake seems to like, but nothing's happened. I've not had any liners from crayfish or anything. So to put more bait on top of bait seems silly. I'm going to see if potentially what's out there is still enough to draw a bite in. But yet again, it's all learning. But on a new venue, stick to a plan. My plan was, if nothing happened on the first day, is not to put any more bait out. So that's that for me. I'm going to skip these in. I don't need to refresh the hook baits because they're all rubber. But yeah, go have a look down at the swim. Right, so that's the last rod out. And it's taken a few casts, to be honest. The wind is brutal left to right. So you're trying to give it a bit of compensation to make sure it gets on the spot. But yeah, I went down to that swim earlier, and I spent the whole day just looking at the water really, and that is massively a valuable thing. Time spent in reconnaissance is never wasted. What's going on here? So yeah, nothing happening down there, nothing anywhere else to make me think of a move. So redo the rods, put them back out. I'm not going to put any more bait out, purely because my plan was give them a big hit and leave it for, you know, a day to see if they come onto it. Nothing has, so for me to add more bait to the situation would seem, in my head, a little bit silly. So rods back out on the spot. I have seen fish showing in and around the area still, so it's not like they are potentially anywhere else in mass numbers. Just going to stick with it. So get this on the rest, treat myself to a Chinese sweet and sour. Right, catch you later. Well, no longer had I spoken to you about putting the rods back out. This little spirited 20 pounds and 2 ounce is one of the new stock that the owner Rich put in earlier in this year. But what a special strain of fish these are. He told me a bit about the lineage. Really, really cool carp to have in his lake. And my first bite from the new syndicate, and a testament to sort of sticking to what I said earlier. If you think what you're doing is right, just stick with it. But yeah, she was very small for what is in this lake, but you will never wipe the smile off my face after the first one of a session. Right, I'm going to slip this one back. It wiped out the other rods, unfortunately. So what I'm going to have to do is redo all rods. But first of all, we'll run around to the van, get some more bait, because I'm going to give them more bait. But yes, first fish from the syndicate, and something to prove to the point. Find them, give them a bit of bait, put something you trust, and the rewards are there. Awesome. Well, there we are, rods out, a load more bait back out, and we'll go through baits and rigs tomorrow, because essentially today has been a graft day. I haven't really been on camera a lot, purely because I've been looking around, tried that other area, had a look around there, couldn't see anything. And this is one of the things, yet again, as the whole feature is approaching a new venue, is to try and spend as much time looking, watching, paying attention as you can. Now, by my own admission, I have been complacent in years on venues that I fish a lot of, sit down and wait for it to happen. But this is a new place, didn't know anything about it, and I thought I've got to, if anything else, just be watching. And when you're talking to you guys in the camera, you can't do that. But today was a day well spent. I've learned a lot of areas, I've seen some fish activity, and I've seen some areas where fish definitely moved to with that wind change earlier. Then the wind changed back into our faces, so I came back up here, got the rods out, and as I said, within that first hour of getting those rods back out, on the bait that was untouched for 24 hours. And that's something I've made a mental note of, and that's part of this learning curve, is to make notes of things. So I've made notes of the wraps, a lot of people do that, the Farrar markers and all those bits and pieces, but take notes. I write it down on my phone, anything that I notice big, like the wind changed, the fish moved, and things like that. So it builds up a picture, it allows you to create an image, a visualization. So over time, if it's a venue you're coming back to, and it's a new venue for the first time only, obviously every time you can learn more and more, but it's only ever new once. So make note of anything you notice, and then you can see if that reacts. So the next time I come, if I see fish moving on wind again, then you'll start to build that picture that fish move on the wind. So that's me yammering and blabbering, but yes, she was only £20, but that puts cement onto the groundworks of what we did. Did the homework, did the research, fished how I wanted to fish, and caught a carp. So still got plenty of time left as well, so fingers crossed for maybe something a bit bigger. But if nothing else does happen, one fish cements the fact of do the work. So without further ado, I've got sweet and sour to get down to, so I'm a bit of sweet and sour, and a nice chill out and watch, hopefully, this beautiful sunset over the horizon in front of me. Right then, now on to the tactical aspects. As I said, unfortunately last night, yet again, nothing happened. And I know it is only a £20 common that is on the tally at the moment, but on your first session, and for me, whenever I go to any venue, catching that first one is the most important thing, because that gives you an insight on how to catch a carp from that chosen venue. So to sort of recap very quickly before we get into the technical parts of what I have been up to, information, knowledge is power, but for this one, because I wanted to approach it as a new venue, I listened to very little amount of that to start with, because I wanted to make my own opinion. But generally, find out as much as you can about the venue and then make your own judgment calls from there. And that is so true, and exactly what I'm going to show you now, which is bait and rigs. Now, on this specific venue, it's dead easy for me, because there is, through sort of the spring, summer and into early autumn, there is a bait rule on the venue. It's pellet, boilie and small cans of corn only. So for me, anywhere where you're allowed to have boilie, you've got to have a load of good boilies. Here, due to the fact that it's the only bit you're allowed, I've gone with a mega mix. So I've got 8 millers, 12 millers, 15 millers, some 2 or 3 different types of bait all in the same mix. And what that then allows me to do is sort of create a particle style feeding situation on a boilie venue, in the fact that I've got really small boilies up to some bigger size boilies. It gives me loads of different options for size hook baits, but also because of the different types of bait in there, I've got nut bait, I've got fish meal baits, I've got sort of an attractive baits, I've got what I would call a campaign style bait. For that first initial input, I can put that all in and I can see if it, when I take anything out later on in the sessions, if that changes. But for me, good old mix of boilies, great. And then, as I said, pellet is allowed on the venue, so a good old mix of pellets. Now, these Calamino pellets that I use now are full of blood powders and blood liquids and calinous liquids and really attractive things. And the idea of that is, when you're fishing any venue, whether it be first time or not, is to try and create the most attractive mix you can. And to make that even more attractive, I add a load of liquids. So for here, The sort of starting mix, if you like, has been blended up boilie sizes and pellets, loads of liquids. And when I say a load of liquids, I'm making this absolutely sticky, stodgy mess. What I do add is a few little scoops of water to this as well, just to sort of clump it all up. And the idea of that is loads of attraction allowed to steep into the bait so that when it's out on the lake bed, it's got a lot of time for that to leach out. The longer that it takes for something to absorb, the longer it will take for it to come out in essence. So I've got really good quality food liquid on a good quality food bait. And I know that, as I say, when I first got here, I put a 17-litre bucket, you know, one of these big buckets absolutely full to the brim. And then I've basically been topping up with half a bucket every other sort of, well, after the fish, and then I'm just putting out some more later on today. So when it comes to approaching a new venue, a bait you already have a confidence and a trust in, whatever company it is that you use is great. Now, if you can find out what bait the lake likes, whether it be a fish meal, whether it be a nut bait, whether it be a cream bait, you can then take from your experience of those baits from the ranges that you use and bring that into your own fishing. So that means that you have confidence in the product that you're putting out into the water. And when you're approaching a new venue, having that confidence in your bait is paramount. Second to that is rigs. Now, when I'm approaching a new venue, because I do fish a lot of venues for the first time due to the work, what I've got is a rig case that's got the 2 or 3 rigs that I have ultimate confidence in, and I will fish them straight out the bag first of all. So Ronnie rigs, those slippery kickery, you know, the combi slip D rigs. For me, it's about using a rig that you have confidence in. And when you're approaching a new venue, as I said right at the very start of this film, do not try and change everything for those first couple of sessions. Go with what you're confident in, because if that doesn't work, then you can make a change. But if you start changing from the start, what you'll probably end up doing is going back to what you were confident at the start, and then you're starting from square one all over again. So to me, bait and rigs are all about confidence. Now, something that is unique on here is the amount of crays. So what I've had to go for here are plastic baits. Now, I've used these before as corn for years and years and years, but actually boilies and wafters, I've never really explored them. So although that is something new that I have had to do on this venue, that's very venue specific. But when you're approaching a new venue, you need to make sure that you are presented in the lake. So by having those rubber hook baits, which I know present with all the cray problems, is paramount. But yet again, I'm using pink dumbbell sort of wafter styles, which I've got loads of confidence in, yellow pop-ups and matching pop-ups. What I would use from the bait range already, but just in rubber. So baits, rigs, and anything specific, when you're approaching a new venue, use what you are confident in. What you've caught on before, do not change it, in my opinion, for the first couple of sessions, because you're trying to learn the water, the fish, the zones, the areas. By changing everything that you've got around you, your bait and your rigs, you're going to make it tougher at the start, in my opinion only. But it's worked here. I've gone in with rigs that I'm confident in, bait I'm confident with, on a spot that I knew I could present on, and it's resulted in a fish. As I say, yes, it's only one, but on that very first session, that is all I'm ever looking for. So without further ado, I've got this half a big bucket to put out in some 20-odd mile-an-hour crosswinds, which is going to be a task, but it needs to be done. So without further ado, let's try and get this bait out. Well, we're approaching the last evening now, and it's been a bit of a mixed emotions really. If when I was driving down here you said, John, you'd catch your first fish from the new syndicate whilst trying to prove the point about how to approach a new venue, I'd be over the moon. However, I do feel that potentially I might have wished to have had at least another fish. The £20 common, absolutely stunning. To catch that on my first session is awesome, and it proves the point of all the things I spoke about. Finding them, giving them the right bait, things you're confident in, etc, etc. And we can go over them as many times as you want. But with these conditions, I really do think maybe I could have had at least another bite. Not long, just put out another half a bucket at, I've had to extend the wraps to 29.5 because of the crosswind. Basically, I knew I wasn't hitting the spot, so I've added a little bit of length to take up the bow in the line to sort of get myself out to that spot. So half a bucket in this insane crosswind was a big effort for a big lad like myself. However, it's all about intensity. It's all about keeping going. And I've really grafted this session, to be honest with you. We are sometimes guilty of not trying as hard as we should, but I really have tried. So if it ends on just that one fish, yes, I will still be happy and it still proves the point. But I am doing the extra night to give myself that extra chance. So hopefully we might see one. If not, we'll catch up in the morning, go over everything we talked about on how to approach a new venue. But for now, chili con carne, rice, and watch that evening roll in. Right, well, that's me right back at the start where it all started from a couple of days ago in the car park after a torrential pack down in the rain. It's meant to be summer, but yes, where do we learn, where do we go from here? Essentially, one fish in the bag is all I could have asked for. It's the perfect start to the new syndicate, if nothing else, to present this video to you guys. So what have I learned really? Fish seem to move on the wind, they love the bait, and they can be tricky. As I said, in any syndicate, it's all about finding out how those fish can be fished for. And I've learned a lot, to be honest, and that's what it's all about. So when approaching a new venue, some of the top tips: do a bit of research. Obviously, as I said at the start, I tried to do as little as possible so that anything I found out was on the case. Obviously, go in with tactics that you're very comfortable with at the start. I say I've gone in with bait, I've gone in with rigs I'm happy with, I've gone in with a bait that I'm happy with. And yes, it was one carp, but it has produced a fish. And keep your eyes on the water. Any minute you can spend checking out what's going on is never a moment wasted. So I will be back, maybe before this video actually goes out. So I might tag on if I catch anything at the end. But if not, and this video goes out before I come back, when I do come back, I will be documenting it again. So from me, from a very wet Cotswold water park, catch you on the next one.